Welcome back, everybody, to Talk of the Now podcast. I'm your host, Gene, and welcome back to the post side of town with Jason and Keith today. Keith, we'll let you in on an inside joke. We're starting to call this podcast the post side of town. At least uh, it's a little inside joke we have from last time we spoke, where Jason and I were talking about the great Johnny Rivers.
Yep.
And how I grew up basically listening to him all the time in my dad's cars driving around.
Doo doo wah, shooby dooby. Yes.
How can you tell me how much you miss me when the last time I saw you, you wouldn't even kiss me?
High on a mountain of love. Yes.
Rest in peace. No, he's still alive. I'm sorry. I had to He's 81 years old. On today's podcast, we are going to be, if Jason's ready, just kidding.
Oh, I'm so ready. Yes.
We're going to be talking about golf, and specifically the Masters. I'm a little late on doing this podcast, folks. My bad. I'd wanted to do it right after, fresh off watching the Masters, because it's one of my favorite things to watch on television. Pretty sure it's one of Keith's things. Pretty sure Jason likes to tune in.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know if you watch it closely or not, Jason.
Not as close as you guys probably, but yeah, I do enjoy it.
You know, that's all right. And Jason, Keith, I think you've been watching since you were a wee lad, right?
Maybe 13, 14.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's much younger than me. I think I was much older before I got into it, maybe as much as college or after college before I actually got into watching the Masters itself. I mean, I did. Yeah. I take that back. I did watch it. I mean, who didn't tune in back when Tiger Woods was doing his thing in the late 90s, or 90s period.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Keith, though, probably has a little bit more Masters knowledge.
There it is.
Yeah. And I've got my shirt on today.
There you go.
I am swagless.
Sorry. I went to my first tourney back in 2018. Went to the practice rounds on Monday, and quite enjoyed it. It was quite the experience, and all three of us have been, right?
Yeah, I went to a practice round a long time ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Keith, have you been to multiple or just one?
Yes, I've been to multiple. The last was in 2017, and one of my college roommates, he scored tickets to a practice round, so he and his wife and Anna and myself had a double date out to the Masters. It was awesome.
How many have you been to?
That's a great question. I'd probably say 4 or 5.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think because I've been to 2 or 3 practice rounds, and I think I went once or twice to an actual round with a friend of ours, Tom Reinhardt.
Okay.
His grandparent, his granddad, I think, had tickets going back to when it started. So his family always had them. So I got to go once. I think I went at least once, if not twice, with Tom, and it was like a weekend round. It was amazing.
Awesome. So you went during the actual tournament a few days.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Two very different experiences.
I was about to ask you if that is a different feel.
It definitely is. I mean, it's. I love what they've done with selling tickets to the practice rounds, because it is a different vibe, and although the players are definitely getting ready, it's definitely a more I don't know, it's just a different vibe when they're getting ready as opposed to the actual tournament itself, because when they're in tournament mode, I mean, it's all the prestige and honor and money on the line, so it gets really, really serious, really, really quick. But the practice rounds they're just, I don't know, they're a lot of fun. I think I'd say over the years, I think the crowds are probably similar. I think people that are not used to going are going to practice rounds, and I think over time, everybody kind of understands what it means to be a Masters patron, and that's spelled out very clear. They have a patron guide that they you can still get, and it delineates all the expected behaviors, and which
Okay.
something very endearing about that, because it's
Yeah.
old school, and I don't know, that sometimes
Yeah.
I think there's something very Mr. Rogers about that, but I love it. I do. I love that.
It's part of the
Okay, so
it's part of the prestige of the draw of the event to me, is that kind of nostalgia type, system.
Yeah.
So so what you're saying is, excuse me, when Thursday hits, it's game on. Basically, their focus and attention is palpable. I guess the way they're trying to play the tournament. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, and for some players, you can see it in the practice rounds as well. It just depends. I mean, 1 year at a practice round, our friend Matt Parrott and I went, and it was one of the years that Tiger won, because we stationed ourselves behind the number 10 tee for a while, and Tiger was playing a practice round with Marco Mira, and they the number 11 tee, my bad. The number 11 tee, we're behind it. So when the players come off of the 10th green, they walk down the hill and back up the hill, and then they have to walk back toward the tee, because the 11th tee is further back, kind of tucked back this way, where the 10th green is kind of over here. So they have to walk back. So, and then they have to walk back up a decent sized hill to come up over the tee. And so Matt and I are sitting there, and we see them go off the green. They disappear for a minute, and then they come up over the hill. And as soon as they come up over the hill, like, Matt just leans over to me and he goes, he's got that look in his eye. He's like, he's winning the tournament this week. And that was either a Tuesday or Wednesday practice round, and he nailed it. Tiger won that week. Matt just was like, it's happening. And so some players like Tiger, they already have that game on look in the practice round. It just depends who they are, their personality, stuff like that.
Yeah. When I went to the practice round, it seemed like to me it's a very laid back atmosphere for the most part. It seemed like the players were laid back, laughing and smiling and doing their thing. So I can imagine the contrast with obviously it's their Super Bowls, their Daytona 500, it's their whatever. I mean, they're one of the sports where your biggest thing is the beginning of the year, practically.
Right. Yeah. It's I would say the Wednesday practice round is unlike any other part of the week, because they have the par 3 tournament in the afternoon, and it's, I mean, if you watched any of the fanfare about it, it's a family affair. A lot of the players either have a spouse or a girlfriend, or one of their kids, or a niece, or somebody carrying the clubs for them for the par 3 tournament, and where a lot of them will let their family member or friend, like, hit a tee shot in the par 3 tournament, and that's just it's just a really fun atmosphere. There's a lot more interaction between the players and the patrons at the par 3. It's in a totally separate part of the grounds, so it's kind of over the hill on, I can't remember what side that is direction wise, but if you're looking at the clubhouse, it's to the left of the clubhouse, and it's kind of downhill, and so it's a totally different part of the grounds. And so what's nice about that is it really separates you from everything else, and people can just have a good old time over there. And if there are players that are not playing, because a number of players don't, some in particular that are, for whatever reason, they just decide not to play the par 3 tournament, so they'll go over they might even be on the course, getting some last minute practice, or they might be over the tournament practice area, getting ready. So
getting those putts in.
Yeah, I mean, well, for some players, it's whatever you can do, whatever edge you can get. So
Yeah. Okay, so Jason, when did you go, and what was your experience?
It was a long time ago, and I don't even think Keith knows I went.
No, I was shocked when you said it. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was just one of those situations, kind of like you, where somebody had tickets. And it was one of my fraternity brothers, actually.
Oh,
Just happened to say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And so it was in the 90s.
okay.
And, you know, pretty much a heyday of Tiger Woods, that kind of deal. We
Right.
had a little bit of a little Phil sprinkled in there, that kind of stuff, and just and getting to watch everybody who shows up for the Masters, like to play in that tournament. People don't realize, the golf greats that you're going to see just roaming around.
I mean, for those that aren't familiar, what are some of the things you're talking about the patrons' expectations are?
Well, a big one these days is no cell phones on the course.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a biggie. So if, particularly on a practice round day, you can take your camera. So if you have a digital camera, you can take your camera. You just can't take your phone. I saw some people, but it was less than a handful of people that still had theirs. And if I know the Masters well, they were probably figured out at some point. But I like that. It's cool because then when people are, teeing off or whatever they're doing, you don't see hundreds of these.
Right.
Right.
Or
Mhm.
which is kind of cool. The other, there's dress. I mean, they have a dress code, how you're supposed to behave, like in terms of no, I guess just in terms of like no
Get in the
rude
hole.
yeah, like no rude behavior, some of those types of things.
Yeah.
Shoes, like you're actually, they have, you're not supposed to wear like the
Sand-
spikes that a lot of the pro players still wear. You can wear just essentially closed-toed shoes. Oh, I don't know if they limit it to closed-toed, but yeah, it's interesting to read it and to look at it.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's a throwback, and it's funny to read. You'll see people, especially now in the past like 5 to 10 years, you'll see somebody write some review about their first time at the Masters, and they're weirded out by the tradition and how perfect it is. And I'm like,
Why'd you go? Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, okay, if you haven't paid attention to this event at all ever, and you're just gonna go and then complain about it, then let somebody else go, please.
Really.
Yeah. So some people really are. Some people are weirded out by how perfect it is, and y'all know, like it's. Matter of fact, I had a buddy go this year for the first time ever, and I told him, I was like, just wait. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna oversell it to you. I was like, but you're going to be floored. And he came back. He goes, dude, because in particular from his business background, he's been to a lot of sales events, a lot of corporate events where they wine and dine you and do all the nice things, the nicest of restaurants and the nicest of hotels and stuff. And he goes, I don't know how. He said, but I was simply a patron there. He said, and I thought that was the most incredible patron experience of any event I've ever gone to. He said it was awesome. And he said, I couldn't believe it. He said, in course, the grounds. He said, it's just, how do they do that? He goes, it's just otherworldly. He said, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't look real. It's immaculate. Yeah, to say the least.
It is. Yeah, we had a volunteer when we went in 2017. We were talking to one of the volunteers at the crosswalks, and which they have they have a wait list for volunteers. But anyway, he said that he said, of course, my buddy Chris Starland, because he knew the guy was pulling our leg. He's like, yeah. He said, we actually have 3 Falconeers that have trained. They've been trained to eliminate the squirrels from the course. So. And of course, Chris, like we all looked and Chris just started dying laughing. The guy's like, yeah, we're not that crazy, He said, but I had you going, didn't I?
It doesn't seem that crazy for them, though.
Right?
That's the thing. Like you'd think it's almost like a royal setting where there's the royal falconer, the royal, keeper of the swans, that kind of thing.
It was. It was like we all went, "Oh, okay," like that's like it's the real thing. So anyway,
That's
that
funny.
was pretty
My
funny.
my one time I went 2018, it was it was cool to go onto the course, like you said. It's almost it's weird when you finally get to, like, when you go to your first baseball game or football game. It's you know, you usually do those things under the age of like 18 or 15.
Yeah,
But when you go to a Masters as an adult for the first time, and you're just used to seeing it on television your entire life, then you walk in. Part of it's kind of like, it looks like a normal golf course, and then the other part of you is like, but it's not. It looks way different. It looks
Yeah.
way more. Now that as I look around, I'm noticing things that I don't see at my not normal every average day golf course. I'm talking about, when you go to a nice country club golf
yeah,
course,
yeah,
um, and you're like, oh yeah, this is different than, we'll just use an example in Atlanta. This is different than, country club of the South. I can tell it's a lot
yeah,
different. It's just got a whole lot different feel to it. And then once you understand the provenance and you start understanding the whole lineage background of it and who's been on that course and what's happened on that course, the deeper you go into the woods of it, kind of like old Yankee Stadium, or
yeah,
with
yeah.
Babe Ruth and
Or
whatnot, or
Fenway. Yeah.
yeah, any of
Hmm.
those, the more appreciation you get for it, the more understanding you have of, the tradition. And then you end up watching the tee off at the beginning to see the old timers go out there and
Uh,
kick it off.
yeah, yeah. I love that part. It's one of my favorite parts every year because then I know after they tee off, they're gonna take them to the press area and have a sit down with the three of those guys. And I
Yeah.
love those. I
uh
absolutely love those to hear how they're keeping up with the game
Hmm.
and the issues with the game. Yet they've been, I mean, even now with Tom Watson being on it, it's still between he, Nicholas, and Gary Player. I mean, those guys are 60 to 70 plus years of playing golf each. You know, they've been around and they've seen tons of changes, and yet they can still speak. Um, they can still speak up to date on what's going on in the game now, which that says a lot for all three of those guys.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I was also impressed with something you touched on, Keith. The like your friend said, the patron experience, like getting into the, now. Granted, it's practically it is pretty much an all day happening when you go to it. It's not like
Yeah,
everybody's rushing to see the first pitch of the game. I mean, yes, a lot of people want to get there for the first, tee off, but I kind of went a little. I mean, I went like a couple hours after it started. I finally got
hmm
there,
hmm
but getting in, going through lines, even waiting for the bathroom. Just everything was pretty much at ease. It's almost
hmm
like I kind of feel like the football and baseball industry should come by and take notes on how to
Yeah.
shuffle people in and out of things.
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, they do an incredible job with this. I mean, from the time I first went back in high school to going in 2017,
uh,
the changes were immense. From the parking to where you went through the gate was completely different. Um, I mean, they've changed so much, and then the big the big merchandise store that is insane. The main patron bathrooms that are over by, well, that are over by the big store,
mhm.
um, that's huge. That I mean, the bathrooms there are immaculate, and then they've got a little nod to like nostalgia. They have a bank, or at least they did in 2017, along that walkway between the merchandise area and the bathrooms. They had, if I remember correctly, they had like I don't know how many like telephones,
Right.
like hello, like you could pick them up and call somebody and say, "Hey, I'm at the Masters,"
Yeah.
like toll free, like like it didn't cost you anything, so you could literally just dial up somebody if you knew their number.
Yep.
Because you remember didn't have your phone on you.
That's right.
You could call somebody and say, "Hey, I'm at the Masters." It was hilarious. I don't know why they started doing that, but I think it's hilarious.
At the
But yeah,
Masters.
like everything about it, like I mean, years ago the tents or the food service wasn't as nice, and it was more tent like, and now they're
Okay.
permanent structures and they're well done. All the signage is, I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like when you go to other golf tournaments, most everything at golf tournaments is temporary. They have to come in like a week before, or if not 2 weeks before, and put up all the grandstands, put up all the tents for the vendors and the merchandise and all that type of stuff. These like tent villages, if you will.
Right.
They have to come in like 1 or 2 weeks ahead of time and put all that up, including television cameras and everything. Well, the Masters, there's not a whole lot they have to add. Well, there's not a whole lot they have to add. I mean, obviously running cables and all that for the TV stuff, but
Yeah.
like so many of the TV towers are permanent. The scoreboards are permanent. The grandstands are permanent. The food, the refreshment buildings are permanent. Like the merchandise store is permanent. Like it's all there. Like it doesn't go anywhere. So they can really do it up.
Let's talk about the food part. All right. So Keith, just what are your thoughts on the food at the Masters?
Love it. I mean, I mean, everything I've had there is good. I like. I mean, I'd say the barbecue is probably the least of my favorites.
Yeah, it's not the,
yeah, but pimento cheese, egg salad, chips, the cookies are good. Sweet tea's great, lemonade's great, and the beer's good. I'll tell y'all a funny story about the beer in a minute. But there's something so simple about those, and the price. I mean, if you got $20 on you, you can feast like a king.
That you don't say at sporting events at all.
No, never. Right. So I do love that.
And that's part of their built-in culture too, right? The cost of the food.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time it's changed. I can't remember. It's awesome. I love it.
Interesting.
Well, and enough that, Keith actually did the whole ordering food from the Masters, and we ate it while we watched the Masters on Saturday at his house one time. That was a fun event.
2021.
Yeah, that was a fun little excursion, because they send you the cups like he's got there, and they're on all the plates, and it's a neat little thing they do where they'll send you the food for your Masters party.
That was a gift of COVID. The Masters wanted to try to get people to experience the Masters at home, so they said, well, for a ridiculous amount of money, we'll send you in a dry iced cooler. We'll send you this amount of food with chips, cookies, pimento cheese, egg salad, barbecue, cup. That we had so many cups.
I know, I've got like 5 at home. Yeah.
But it was, and they still do it. They've continued doing it. So
I think when I went that one time, I was undecided, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 3 choices I can go with here. So I ended up going with the club sandwich. I think.
I've heard it's good.
I think it was the turkey club maybe, and it was brilliant. I was eating, and I was like, I mean, there's not much to it as far as what it is, but for something that's on square bread like this or whatever, it's it's probably the best one I've ever had. It's cold sandwich or whatever.
100%. Yeah, the I was going to tell y'all the beer story when we went 2017 with my buddy Chris and his wife. They all the non-alcoholic drinks come in a clear cup. To get a green cup, you got to buy beer. And so Anna and I each wanted one, and so did my buddy Chris and his wife. But they didn't either one want beer. And they're like, we'll pay for it if you'll drink it. And I'm like, oh man. So we'd have one early in the day. Yeah, Anna and I'd have one around lunch, and then they were like, if you'll get one real quick before we go, we'll pay for it. Well, it was late in the day, and so Anna and I both are trying to down this, and it's late. We're dehydrated. It's hot.
Oh gosh.
And by the time we're walking out, Chris and his wife they were laughing at us because we're like, man, this is rough. This is rough. We couldn't wait to get back to the car to get water. And we did. And we were, that's not a whole lot to drink. Right. And we got back, we sat in the car for like 30 or 45 minutes and just drank water and just sat there for a minute. We're like, that was not a good decision. We're like, we suffered for those 2 years. But
so they can have their green cups. Yeah.
They got their 2 green cups. We got our 2 green cups and we were good to go. So, like he will never let me live that story down. So.
Man. Well, that's, yeah, the one thought that I did have about, not that the Masters needs my advice, but, one of the thoughts that I had about the merchandising, the store was, wouldn't that be so cool? Because obviously people want to buy their stuff. If they sold it online, people would be buying it all the time. They'd probably be sold out all the time. But that would be very cool though, if like either like during the Masters they open up an online store, or if like right after the Masters for like 24 hours, they open up the online store. I always thought that would be kind of cool if they did something like that.
Yeah. Huh. That would be kind of cool.
So, all right, y'all. Well, sounds good. And anyway, moving on. That leads me to a couple of questions I've had, which there may not be answers to these, but during the year from when the Masters ends to the next year tee off, are people playing rarely on this course? I know celebrities play, and is it pretty rare that people even play on the course?
No, I mean I've known a handful of people that have actually played out there.
Okay.
And like from what I understood, I don't know if this is still the case, but a certain number I don't know exactly how they work it, but a certain number of the volunteers get to go play after the Masters is over.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I know the media does.
Yeah, media does. And then like guests, if any of the members want to have a guest to come. I mean, the course is open, not all year, obviously, but they're open until I can't remember, sometime maybe September, October, and I think they close it up and do a lot of work. And I mean, it's crazy. They actually, speaking of patrons, like one of the things they did a few years back, I can't remember how many years ago, a common issue for a lot of golf courses when they have tournaments is, you have to have crosswalks, places on the fairway where people can go across a hole, right, to get to the next one. And a common issue is that throughout the week of a tournament, that area can get really bad. It can get trampled. It can get, sometimes if it rains, it can get muddy, and it can get kind of rough for the players to play through that if they hit it that far. Well, the Masters was like, not a problem. We're going to put the same system that they put around some of the greens. They're going to put it under every crosswalk. So they've got a drying system, if you will, like a drainage and drying system that's under every crosswalk now.
Oh, wow.
At least I think I think I read about that.
Never heard that. Okay.
This year.
Wow.
So when you go, you'll walk past these vents that are in the ground and you'll hear it, especially if it's been raining. You'll hear it, and they're draining water out and keeping dry.
It nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean that they do. They've been known to do all kinds of crazy things at Augusta, like to get plants to bloom. There's stories about they'd roll out these big sets of lights at night to keep the lights on to try to get these plants to, I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. Of course, all the greens and the tees, I think now have the heating and cooling underneath to help with keeping them dry, keeping the grass from not drying out or whatever.
Yeah, going back, I think that it's. I think they try to, and I'm just speculating, but I get the feeling that they're trying to display a sense of, I don't know if family's the right word, but they're trying to let you feel like when you come here, you're actually being invited to sort of a social party, if you will, where we're kind of, so, and I mean social party as in like the old school kind of like you're going to the ball or something like that.
Mhm.
You're going to a,
Kentucky Derby. Yeah.
yeah, that's probably a good comparison. So it's kind of refreshing, like you said, Keith. You don't have to see stupid cell phones up in the air and people,
That alone is like another world, you know,
hmm
to go to a place where you're not going to see that. I mean,
Mhm.
like you said, only a handful of people, and eventually they're going to get caught, and had something said to it. But like to just not see that, where people are actually enjoying the event. Like, how many times have you gone to a concert where it's just nothing but you see
Oh
nothing in your
gosh,
view but cell phone screens? Like, why are you here if you're just gonna film it? But it's that same thing. Like, that's what makes this such a organic experience. Is
yeah,
is that
heck,
you're not doing that.
I,
You're doing it the
yeah.
same way you were doing it in the '90s.
I
Or
felt like
in
I
the
learned something
'70s.
like in that 3 hours, whatever it was, 3.5 hours or so that I was at that thing.
Yeah.
The practice. I felt like I sort of learned something about myself and sort of like outside of times when I purposely put down my cell phone and don't. It was kind of nice to go about my life for 4 hours and not use my cell phone whatsoever for any
Mhm.
reason.
And you're
Do
fine. You
this.
existed. You didn't explode. Yeah. And there's some people that
Yeah,
couldn't do it. Yeah.
hmm
it is. It's really. I mean, you start to take in sights and sounds a little differently.
Yeah.
I
After a
think
few hours, and if you get there, early and stay as late as you can, especially if you get late in the day, and like you're some of the people that are trying to escort off the course. Um, at the end, it's man, it's so quiet and peaceful out there, and it's just uh, you want to breathe in like every last second before you get off that course, because it's just even it looks different every part of the day. Um, I mean, Tom and I've gotten there. The time we went, we were there at daybreak.
hmm
We were there lined up at the gate to get in. Um, and going back to that, Gene, you're talking about, people line up to get in the gate so they can go put their chairs in their spot. And
Oh yeah.
there's no spots, there's no reservations. You
right.
just you have a ticket to get in the gate. That is it.
Right.
So if you're there first, you can go, and literally people run through that gate. And of course, they tell people not to run, but part of the patron rules. But people will try to get to a spot as quick as they can, set their seat down. And this is another thing that's just unlike so many other sports and venues. If you go and set your seats down, because I remember Tom did this, because they always set up on the 16th hole on the far side of the pond from the green. You go, set your seats up, and then you go walk the course, or you go get something to eat. And of course, on 16 at the beginning of the day, there's nobody on the back nine, so there's nobody back there anyway. But everybody will set up their seats and leave them and go walking, and nobody does anything to your seats. Like it's an understood rule.
hmm
Somebody got there, leave their stuff alone. It's theirs.
Yep.
Is
That's
a
part of the civility we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
It
Yeah.
I
is.
mean,
It's otherworldly. Like in today's culture, it's otherworldly.
yeah. I mean, that to me shows if we can do it there, how come you can't do it at a football game? How come you can't do it at a baseball game? How come you can't do it wherever?
The only other place I remember doing that, and growing up, all the years that we went, was
Yeah.
the lawn in front of the Stone Mountain Carving,
Yep. The
Uh,
laser show. Yep.
the leisure
right.
show. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and also, I'll just be honest with you. Like, I go to something every year that kind of has like understood culture is what you call that.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Road Atlanta does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like at Road Atlanta, when you go to Petit Le Mans, you have your initial land run if you're getting a spot on a hill or on a side, and kind of people know that that's your spot. Like that's people's spots.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like us, you have the Turn 10 Mafia that kind of regulates on who can come and share the spots that are new and who can't. But there's an understood culture, and I think that's kind of what we're missing in a lot of sports too. Like you're saying, there's this understood kind of civility. and structure and way of doing things, and yeah.
Well, it's like anything else, you set the expectations, and if you're not going to reinforce the expectations, then set the expectations low and people will meet them. Set them high and people will meet them.
Right. And a
So,
lot of times it's like happens, the community will regulate itself in a
Mhm.
way. And that's really the best way for it to go about, because then you don't have those. I mean, I'm sure there's been incidences,
Sure. Oh,
of
yeah.
people, losing, but you could probably count it on your hand. I mean, it's probably that
Yeah.
low. It's just that culture. It's just the culture
Well-
is cultivated there. So
Looking at a few stats here. Built in 1938. I'm sorry, 31. Augusta National co-founders Clifford Roberts, Bobby Jones bought the property on which the course is built for $70,000.
hmm
that was a lot back then.
Yeah,
That's
this is
an
from
old-
Paradigm.
is an
Or no,
old,
I'm sorry, golf.com. Huh?
It's an old plant nursery,
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
yeah,
which is
kinda lends-
why all the holes have a different. They're named after a different plant.
Yep.
What's Amen Corner named after?
Oh, well, Aiming Corner is like 3 holes altogether. So
Okay.
11, 12, and 13. So I have that somewhere. I can't remember what the names are. I could probably look it up real quick, but yeah, I can't remember all the names. I mean, there's names like Holly and Dogwood.
Is Azalea in there? I can't remember. Like,
yeah, I think Azalea's in there.
yeah.
Yeah, they're, like I said, they're all named after the plant, a number of the plants that were there.
There were 76 members when it first opened.
Wow,
I don't know how many are there now.
that's sizable. Keep going.
I was going to say CBS first televised Masters in 1956. So I guess
There you
prior
go.
to 56, you must have had to get on the radio to hear about it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, they've it's really neat on the Masters website. They've got pictures and articles about all the old stuff, and like the old press, where the press used to hang out, and when they typed their papers and wire them, it was essentially like those old, like half circle army barracks. Essentially, is what it was.
Kwanzaa hut. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what the old press building was.
Wow.
They got some really fascinating pictures, but I mean, it's interesting. I think if I'm not incorrect here, I'm trying to look. So Augusta and some other courses like it that are out from the city, if you will, like they came because, not necessarily exactly because, but some of the larger cities were growing, and the people that had private golf clubs in the more downtown areas wanted something further out. And so East Lake Golf Club, which was started in like 1908 in downtown Atlanta, that's where Bobby Jones was. I mean, that's where,
Yep.
I mean, he kind of grew up in Atlanta. And so Augusta was their out of town club, as was Atlanta Athletic Club, which, if y'all know where that is, up, kind of up toward Alpharetta.
Right.
It was the same thing. Alpharetta was out of town at that time, and that was the retreat club for all the East Lakers, the East Lake Golf Club. The out of town place to go was the Atlanta Athletic Club, and so that's why the styling of Atlanta Athletic, if you ever make it out there, is very, very similar to East Lake.
Yeah, Gene and I went to a wedding there. Yes.
Yeah.
A wedding reception there.
That kind of English Tudor look.
Yeah.
Very
Not
much
together.
that.
Jason was not my +1.
No. So let's make that very clear. We weren't together, but yes, we had our own name
Y'all had
cards that
separate
were separate.
invitations.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think some of that was that. It was that the cities were becoming more industrialized, so the private clubs wanted to get kind of outside the city, and I think that's what drove people to do things like Atlanta Athletic and Augusta.
Well, I think that we could cover it for another hour, but I got to go. What else is on your mind? What thoughts about the tournament itself, Keith, that you want to finish off with?
I thought it was a good one.
Oh yeah, this year. Well, we should talk a little bit about it. What do you think about this year's?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You know, I think people had a lot of high hopes for different people going in. But golly, I'm having a brain fart right now as to who. For right now, I'm really struggling as to whether John or Scotty won it.
Scott.
Yeah, man, my brain. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, that's right. It was John that gave Scotty the jacket.
Yep.
Right.
That's right. Sorry. Yeah, Scotty was great. Scotty's a cool dude.
Now it's not always that often number one wins it, right? I don't know how often
Right.
that happens.
No.
Number one ranked
Mm.
guy.
No.
That's what I was gonna say. Is the Masters tends to be that kind of like, whoa, that
Yeah.
surprised me, kind of, which is
Yeah.
is nice,
Mhm.
that the top
Yeah.
golf tournament is a surprise like that. It's almost like, to me, and a weird comparison, I know, but like the March Madness stuff, where even like a small school can come up and just
absolutely.
take
You mean a
it.
Cinderella story, Jason?
Well, yeah, and it's like it almost becomes expected at the Masters to me, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I've heard of the people, but like not very
There-
often. I mean, obviously, like there are times when it's like,
Hey, yeah,
Tiger Woods or
absolutely.
somebing like that, but
Yeah.
Bubba
even
Watson
he
comes to
wasn't
my
guaranteed.
mind.
Yeah, Bubba Watson. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't
His first.
not always everybody that's the top golfer in the world that everybody's talking about has got the big sponsorship. He may not win, like.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a good chance he won't, actually, and that's what's different about golf. Golf is kind of one of those sports too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. This year was different for me just because I do sort of a friendly bet with one side of my family, and we sort of all kind of place our bets for a gift card type deal for who we want to win. And I had Scotty at like, I think I had him a negative 13. Well, anyway, I got beat out by somebody to win it, but it was impressive to see him just stay strong the
Mhm.
entire way through, pretty much.
Yeah.
There wasn't too much of doubt from what I recall.
No. Mm-mm.
Like sometimes it can yo-yo on who's going to win it all. But,
Yeah. I think I realized this year, I finally came to the realization that I don't want to say Tiger will never do something, because the moment you say that, he'll do something. But I think this year, I finally made peace with the fact, maybe not the fact, but the possibility that he's won his last major. Because
yeah,
I think watching him, I don't know, it's hard to be at that level when he can't do the things that he used to do to stay at that level, and
right.
he can't do the things that the other guys that are in the top 10 right now, he can't even do the things that they do right now, even if that's as much or more than he used to.
Right.
I think for a long time, it was the people that had that were most known for their workout and practice regimens were Tiger, VJ, and Bernard Longer. I mean, it was those three. Maybe Phil somewhere in there, I think, because Phil was always pretty hungry. I mean, Phil was always hungry. He loves competition, but
Right.
but in terms of practice and the rigor that they would put in,
Yeah.
I think for a long time they were, but literally Tiger can't do that anymore. Like, he cannot do that to his body anymore. So
No, that accident really took
Yeah.
a toll.
So the likelihood of him being prepared to take on a field as strong as the fields are right now, with the players that are
Yeah.
killing it right now, I love him. I would love to see it. I just,
Oh yeah.
I
Well, I
think
mean,
this year
I
was that
mean,
moment. I went, I just don't see it happening.
Just as far as like Masters moments go, the last time he won,
Unbelievable.
I was over at Parma Pizza Tavern or whatever on that afternoon with a bunch of people, and all of us were in tears
Mhm.
watching that, because you felt it. We all felt it for him. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
well, that was a freaky moment that he had won it that year. Anyway.
I know.
Absolutely.
That's But that's what made it almost
Absolutely.
kind of sweeter for him, because it's
I
like
mean,
his last hurrah of,
yeah.
if I'm going to win it, it's going to be this. Nobody expected that kind of thing.
I mean, I don't know if
And
this is a comparison, but him winning at 19 to me would be like Tom Brady coming back when he's 50 and winning a Super Bowl or something with like, the Cleveland Browns or something.
Yeah.
right, because these greatest of all times that we deal with, they're going to have it's going to be a time when they're not, and that's the hardest for any of us to deal with. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we try to compare a lot of people. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day. We were talking about baseball, and it's like, well, to me, Bo Jackson. Everybody always kind of forgets about Bo Jackson. If he hadn't been injured, what would have
Dude.
happened? Right.
Well, I think Bo Jackson may have been very well the most athletic baseball player of all time.
And he probably would have shattered a lot of things, but wasn't meant for him to be. And I mean, and it's the same with Tiger. Like, obviously, that accident was just horrible, but he wasn't quite on his A game before that accident. Too. So it was kind of like he was already kind of going to have to play catch up. So you add a major physical trauma to that, and it's like, oh gosh, and you hate to see it, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
he's still
I
Tiger.
mean, there's no taking away from his golf career, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So Keith, let me ask you this speculative question. I think Nicholson still has the record though, right? From number of Masters, I think.
Nicholas.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Nicholas. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And you always hear this every year when they do their broadcast, because this year I even watched some of the post, coverage for like hours into the night. What would there probably be another 3-4 guy out there, you think, anytime soon? That can win it that many times, 3 or 4 times?
I mean, there are guys playing right now, I think, that have the capability. It's just a matter of whether they put it together in one stretch at the right time to do it. I mean, for a number of years, there for a stretch, they were looking at Dustin Johnson to pull that off. I mean, I would say that you'd still put people like Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas. I mean, John Rahm.
Yeah.
I mean, John Rahm's he's still a young buck. I mean, that boy can poke it.
Spieth is Spieth even 27-ish yet?
Yeah, those guys, they're all still young. I mean, they and even Xander. I was excited to see Xander win, because Xander, I think, is such a cool cat, such a good dude. I mean, he's young. Scotty's young. I mean, again, is it possible? Sure. Are we going to see any of those guys turn into a Tiger-like figure? Maybe. Who knows? You don't know until they do it. Nobody knew Tiger was going to do what he was going to do.
Yeah.
Well, in some sense. I mean, when he first came out, a lot of tour veterans were like, this kid's different. I mean, Nicholas, I think Nicholas has been known to say that. A lot of players are known to say that. They're like, this kid's playing another game. He's not playing the same game we are. So unless you get somebody like that, I don't know that I've heard anybody use that type of language in talking about any of the current players. Like, this cat's playing a different game than everybody else, because Tiger truly was.
Well, the reason I brought it up, and I'll close out pretty soon with this, but I was just thinking about this, talking to my wife about it the other night, how nowadays with any sport for that matter, whether you want to be a golf player, baseball, basketball player, the level of competition out there, just like being in any business for that matter, the amount of people trying to descend upon any given popular sport at any time, whether it be Little League baseball, football, basketball, auto racing, people that are trying to wedge themselves into the competition and keep a half decent normal life and try to keep their sanity and try to keep their schedule going and all the information that's out there for them to get ready, all the physical therapy we have and all the information we have on nutrition and I guess physical fitness and all that kind of stuff. It seems to me like it's a different type of way to try to wedge yourself into, like, if you're from the 1970s, I guess, trying to be the best of the best.
I have heard commentators and articles talk about that, about how today's tour pros are different. One, a lot of them come to the tour already prepared to handle a lot of the things that come with being on the tour, talking to the press, just managing their time. They're just, from high school and college programs, they're doing a better job getting them ready. But at the same time, a lot of these guys you hear them talk about it. They want a balanced life. Some of them are, I think, learning some things from some of the other players that have gone. I mean, some really high profile players through the 80s and 90s were awesome players, but man, they were a wreck off the course. I mean, a complete wreck. And so I think some of these younger guys are learning some of that. And you hear a number of these young guys talk about family. I mean, there's a bunch of these young guys that are married and have little ones, which is why I was so sad to hear about Rory's filing for divorce this week. But a lot of those guys talk about balancing their life, and you didn't hear a whole lot of that from people like Tiger. I mean, one thing was on his mind, and that was winning, and that was it. On the other hand, Jack Nicklaus was that way, but you hear a lot of people, and even his family, talk about how much he valued his family and spending time with his family and investing in his family. So I don't know, that there's a few people have done it and figured it out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but golly, the golf, I don't know how many tournaments each player is allowed to be in, but they pretty much go from like February to November, right?
Yeah, and again, it depends on who they are. Some might play fewer tournaments. Some will play as many as they can because, some there are variations of how much they love the game versus how much they love competition. And I think that's two different things sometimes. So,
all right, guys. Well, Jason, Keith, I like talking golf with y'all.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was fun. I appreciate
Keith,
it.
We're gonna go play sometime.
At
it. Might have hit a few worm burners, but
That's true. It was a ball.
All right. Yeah. Well, with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Jason, Keith.
Yep.
Thank you.